Welcome to The Explainer. So often we feel like we're just reacting to life, right? Today, we're going to dive into a framework for building a personal philosophy, a way to actually navigate life with a real sense of purpose.
So let's just jump right in with a big one. If you don't have a clear ideal for yourself, what ends up being the judge? Well, it's usually other things, right? Your fears, what other people think, or just the constant noise of the world. So it begs the question, who or what is really in charge of your life?
There's this feeling that's kind of common these days, isn't there? We're so used to everything being so unstable that we get stuck just reacting to whatever is right in front of us. It's like a kind of moral disorientation. We're just bouncing from one thing to the next, reacting to the chaos, but without any real vision for who we even want to become.
And look, if you feel this way, it's not just you. This feeling of being adrift, well, it actually points to a much, much bigger problem. And it's all about a fundamental disconnect in how we even relate to knowledge itself.
Yeah, there's actually a name for this phenomenon, cognitive parallax. It's a fancy term, but the idea is simple. Think of it as this giant gap between the abstract, big ideas we talk about and the actual, messy reality of our own lives. We know all this stuff, but somehow that knowledge just doesn't connect with who we actually are day to day.
And this is a perfect example of what that looks like. The source talks about these students having a really intense debate about complex social theories, stuff about poverty, but they're completely ignoring their own role in the system as consumers. It's like they're adopting this external academic viewpoint that's completely detached from where they're actually standing.
And this really gets to the heart of the conflict, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got this academic knowledge. It's theoretical, it's impersonal. But on the other hand, you've got lived knowledge, the stuff that's personal, it's sincere, it has real existential weight for you. And if philosophy doesn't bridge that gap, well, it just becomes another boring subject you study, not something you live.
Okay, so if we're living with this internal division, how do we fix it? How do we find a kind of knowledge that actually unites our life, instead of just breaking it into more pieces?
Well, the answer proposed here is actually pretty simple, and it's ancient. It goes all the way back to Socrates. The idea is to stop looking out there for all the answers. Instead, you've got to turn that lens inward, right to the center of your own personality. This is all about making philosophy a personal practice, not just some academic thing you think about. Now, the very first step on this journey, it requires a pretty radical kind of honesty. And I want to be clear here. This isn't necessarily about religion or theology. It's about adopting a very specific, a philosophical mindset.
So think of the concept of God here as a practical tool. Just imagine an omniscient observer, someone who knows you better than you know yourself. When you tell your story to this observer, you can't hide anything. You're talking to someone who already knows all your secrets, all your hidden thoughts, and something amazing happens. That act of total, sincere confession, it reveals your own life back to you with a kind of clarity you just can't get on your own.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do that? How do we put it into practice? Well, it all builds toward a really powerful exercise, a concrete first step you can take on this journey.
To kick off this process of really building a self, we're given this tool, and it's a powerful one, maybe even a little startling. It's called the Necrology. And yeah, it's basically writing your own obituary, but trust me, it's not in the way you're probably thinking.
Okay, so here's how it works. You imagine your life is over, done, and some objective, outside observer is writing the story of it, summarizing its meaning. The key here is that this story isn't a list of your accomplishments. It's not about what you did. It's about the person you became. It's the story of the ideal version of you, fully realized. And that final, unified picture of your life, that becomes your North Star, your guide.
Now, the most important rule is this. You have to write it in the third person, from an outside perspective. Why? Because that's what forces objectivity. You're not just journaling your feelings. You are defining the final, unified shape of your life as someone else would see it. And the goal isn't to be famous. It's to be notable, to have lived a life with a clear, coherent meaning.
And just to be clear, this is not supposed to be some morbid, depressing exercise. Quite the opposite. By defining the end of the story, you're actually creating a map that can guide your choices right here, right now.
So what you're really doing with this exercise, with this necrology, is building a solid foundation inside yourself. You're creating your own inner judge, an authority that is truly yours, something that can guide your actions with real consistency and purpose, day in and day out.
But here's the thing. This ideal self isn't supposed to be some fantasy living in a vacuum. No, its whole point is to face the real world. The philosopher Ortega y Gasset had a great line for this.
He said our destiny is to reabsorb our circumstances. What does that mean? It means taking all your unique stuff, your challenges, your limitations, the cards you were dealt, and giving it all meaning through the lens of this ideal you've created.
I mean, think about it. Daily life is chaos, right? It's constantly trying to pull you in a million different directions, with endless demands and distractions. This exercise, this necrologio, gives you a powerful anchor, a single, unifying idea. It's a stable image you can hold on to that brings order and meaning to all the randomness of your day-to-day.
So when you get right down to it, this whole thing is way more than just a thought exercise. It's a practical way to take real ownership of your story and to build your own personal moral compass.
And that brings us to the final question we want to leave you with. This whole explainer has been about finding a guide for your future, but it all has to start with a brutally honest look at your present. So, if an observer had to write your story, based only on your life up to this very moment, what would it say? And is that the story you actually want to tell?